The man only wanted a room. But the receptionist laughed at him right in front of everyone. She had no idea that just hours later, the entire hotel would be on their knees when he walked back in. He wore a cowboy hat, a faded wool coat, scuffed leather boots, and spoke with a deep, warm voice like the evening wind of the West. He didn't ask for much, only the best room available, but what silenced the entire lobby was when the receptionist burst out laughing. "Do you even know how much our most expensive room costs?" No one at the hotel that day realized. They had just turned away the actual owner of the very place they were working in. They didn't recognize him, not because he was disguised, but because they were so used to judging people by appearances alone. So if you had only 30 seconds to judge someone, what would you look at? Their clothes, their attitude, their bank balance. She used to believe she could tell right away, and that belief led her into a moment where her career nearly collapsed, her reputation crumbled, and her ego was shattered. But this isn't a story about failure. It's a story about someone brave enough to make things right, and a man who chose forgiveness over punishment. What if the person you once humiliated ended up being the only one who could still see the good in you, even when you forgot it yourself? This is the story of Megan Delaney and a guest named Clint. A lesson in humility, in second chances, and in why you should never underestimate anyone just because they don't look the way you expect. Megan Delaney was the kind of person you could admire and also dread a little. In the quiet little town of Jackson Ridge, Wyoming, where life moved slow, simple, and steady, Megan stood out like a sharp stiletto in a row of cowboy boots. At just 27, she was already the front desk manager at Lone Pine Lodge, a rustic wooden hotel nestled against the mountainside. Not exactly luxury, but it was considered the heartbeat of the town, with her blonde hair always pulled back into a flawless ponytail, crisp white shirts ironed to perfection, a half smile that never reached her eyes, and a voice sharp as a razor blade. Megan kept the hotel running like a Swiss watch. She didn't like clutter, and she liked people with uncertain origins even less. Locals in town called her Megan the Gatekeeper because she had a way of sorting guests with just one glance: silk shirt, Italian leather shoes, Amex card VIP suite, muddy boots, worn-out canvas bag, thick country accent, ground floor, or "sorry, we're fully booked." To Megan, every day was a performance, and she was the lead actress no one dared to challenge. Until that morning, when the hotel bell chimed like it did every day. She looked up from the front desk and saw him, a tall man in a dark wool coat, cracked-heeled boots, and a slightly tilted cowboy hat. He walked slowly, each step solid, as if the world had never rushed him. No one quite noticed it, but something about him made the lobby fall quieter than usual. Megan didn't care. She glanced at him, tilted her chin slightly, and prepared her usual stance mockery and price tags. "I'd like the best room you have, young lady," he said, his voice deep and polite. "The best room," Megan smirked. "You do know it starts at $400 a night, right?" "I do." He nodded. "And I'll take it." She laughed the same way she always did when someone came in with dreams too big for their boots. Maybe you want to check the price again. Might save you. A cow. The whole lobby chuckled. He didn't. He simply pulled out a handkerchief, wiped a bit of dust off the counter, and softly said, "Perhaps I won't be needing a room after all." He gave a courteous nod, turned, and walked away. Megan managed to toss in one last sarcastic jab. "Have a nice day, cowboy." To her, it was just another workday, maybe even an amusing one. But to that man, it was the moment he decided he'd be coming back, not to get revenge, but to teach this place and that young woman a lesson they'd never forget. The morning passed, guests came and went, and Megan remained in full lobby queen mode. She recounted the old cowboy story with smug satisfaction and a touch of pride. You guys should have seen it. He looked at that price list like it was Texas in 1920. So then what happened? Jake the bellhop asked curiously. What happened? Megan shrugged. I sent him off with a line straight out of a Western. Polite, but sharp. Lisa, Megan's closest co-worker, let out a quiet chuckle, though her eyes showed a hint of disapproval. He didn't really do anything to deserve that tone, did he? You didn't see it, Megan replied. Dirty clothes, worn-out boots, walked like he just herded cattle straight from a ranch. If I hadn't shut it down early, it would have turned into one of those book a room and skip the deposit scams. Jake whistled. Dang. But you sure he wasn't someone important? I heard he didn't even flinch when you turned him down. Some folks said he even smiled. Megan tilted her head back and laughed. Oh, Jake, I've been in this business for 7 years. I know how to read people. No one with real money dresses like that. What she didn't know was that just across the street, in the corner booth of a nearby cafe, the man was sitting quietly alone. In front of him sat a cup of cold coffee and a local newspaper. On his head was the same old cowboy hat. In his eyes a calm, unhurried gaze, and behind the glass window was the hotel he had quietly purchased 6 years ago, keeping its original name so no one would suspect a change in ownership. Clint wasn't angry. He didn't get angry with young people, especially those who hadn't yet seen enough of life to understand it. But he remembered every word Megan said, not because they offended him, but because they symbolized exactly what he wanted to change. The way people judged others with their eyes without listening, without trying to understand. He pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. Send out a notice to the entire board of directors tomorrow morning. Meet me in Jackson Ridge. I want to do a surprise inspection on hotel operations. The voice on the other end hesitated slightly. You mean Lone Pine Lodge? Yes, Clint replied. I want to see if this place still holds the spirit it was built on, or if all that's left is a polished facade. He ended the call, then stepped out of the cafe and looked toward the hotel, the place he once dreamed would be a sanctuary for the forgotten. Tomorrow would be an interesting day, not to expose faults, but to see who truly understood the meaning of the word welcome. The next morning, when Megan walked into the hotel, the clock on the wall had just struck 7:45 a.m. She moved with her usual poise, decisive. polished and never letting anyone get in her way. But today, something in the air felt different. Lisa was standing by the front desk, whispering with Jake, but the moment they saw Megan approaching, both of them fell silent. "Is something going on?" Megan asked, setting her bag on the counter. Lisa glanced at Jake, then lowered her voice. "Haven't you heard? The board of directors is coming for a surprise inspection tomorrow morning." "The whole board?" Megan frowned. "That's strange. They usually just send one representative." Jake chimed in. "Word is, they're bringing an investor too. Someone big." Megan raised an eyebrow. "Who's so important?" "The mayor." Lisa hesitated. "A guest yesterday said he looked like Clint Eastwood." The words hit like a hammer. Megan burst out laughing. "Come on, Clint Eastwood." At this hotel, wearing dirty boots and a torn cowboy hat, Jake nudged her arm. Not joking. A couple from Montana confirmed it. They met him at a charity event. They said it was definitely him. Megan pressed her lips together, forcing a chuckle. She wanted to dismiss it all as nonsense. But something inside her began to shiver. That look in his eyes, that calm smile, that gesture wiping dust with a handkerchief as if trying to send a message. And him, not reacting, not angry, not defending himself, just smiling, nodding and walking away. Megan tried to reassure herself. Come on, he was just an old man with pride. If he was someone important, he would have said something. A powerful man would never let himself be insulted in silence. But deep down, another voice whispered, or maybe it's because he is powerful that he doesn't need to say anything. That entire day, Megan worked in a haze of anxiety. She started double-checking every reservation, every guest request, wiping down every speck of dust on the counter. Her usual confidence had vanished, replaced by something unfamiliar: worry. As she was leaving, Lisa called out behind her, "Don't forget to wear something nice tomorrow, Miss Celebrity. Who knows, maybe Clint Eastwood really will come back." Megan didn't reply. She just walked slowly out the door. Her shadow stretched long in the fading afternoon light. No one knew. That night, she dreamed of him, the man with the cowboy hat and the unjudging smile. And in the dream, he didn't speak a word, but his eyes made Megan bolt awake in the middle of the night, her heart pounding, her thoughts in chaos. The next morning, even before the front desk bell rang for the first time, the entire hotel was buzzing with an unusual kind of energy. Megan entered the lobby with a cup of coffee in hand, barely lifting it to her lips when a firm voice called out from the hallway, "All staff to the meeting room in 5 minutes." It was Mr. Thompson, the general manager of Lone Pine Lodge. He never raised his voice, and he never called meetings this early. So when he was this serious, it could only mean something major. The small meeting room filled with silence, broken only by the soft rustle of papers and the gentle tapping of pens on the table. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. "I'll be brief," he began. "The board of directors from Blue Mesa Holdings will be arriving at this hotel today for a full inspection." "Full inspection," Lisa blurted out. "Every room, every process, every guest interaction." He nodded. This is an unannounced audit, and from what I understand, it could be tied to a re-evaluation of operational leadership. Megan froze. Blue Mesa Holdings. That was the shadowy investment firm behind many of the luxury hotels in the West, including Lone Pine Lodge. But they had never personally shown up at a small branch like this. Jake whispered, "You think they're planning to sell the place or overhaul the entire management?" Lisa added. "Mr. Thompson slammed his hand lightly on the table. "I don't want speculation. I just want you all to do what we've always done, only better." His gaze rested on Megan for a few long seconds before he continued. "Whoever walks through that door today, they are guests, and every guest deserves to be treated with respect." That last line pierced Megan like a sharp needle to the chest. She swallowed hard. Her mind spun, but she still managed a nod. "Yes, sir." The meeting ended, and no one dared to joke around like usual. Everyone returned to their posts, but their eyes darted back and forth, quietly sizing each other up, waiting. As for Megan, she stood still behind the counter, her eyes fixed on the brass plaque hanging on the wall. "We don't just hand over keys, we hand over the feeling of being welcomed." It was the hotel's slogan, hanging there since the day she started working. But today, for the first time, she asked herself, "Have I really lived up to that?" She used to take pride in how fast she worked, how sharp her words were, how quickly she could categorize guests with a single glance. But in all those skills, not one of them included listening or understanding from the heart. That afternoon, while tidying up the front desk, Megan spotted a dusting cloth tucked neatly in the drawer. It was the same one the old man had used to wipe the counter before walking out of the hotel. She picked it up, her hand slightly trembling. Could he have something to do with this inspection? And if he did, what would she have to face the next morning? The sky over Jackson Ridge was utterly still. Dawn cast a soft mist across the glass windows of Lone Pine Lodge, as if the town itself was holding its breath in anticipation. Megan arrived earlier than usual. Her hair was tied tighter. Her white shirt was crisp and spotless. She stood behind the front desk, aligning brochures, straightening flower vases, and wiping imaginary dust from a counter already gleaming. Lisa walked over and whispered, "You doing okay?" "Not sure." Megan exhaled. "But if there's ever a day I need to be, it's today." At 10:15 a.m., the sound of engines echoed from the distance, then stopped just outside the main entrance. 3 sleek black SUVs slowly pulled up to the front. Every eye in the lobby turned toward the doors. The first car door opened and a man in a grey suit stepped out, followed by several others in sharp attire, briefcases in hand. They looked around the lobby with the discerning eyes of people well versed in silent evaluation. Megan stood tall and drew a deep breath. Her eyes scanned quickly, no cowboy hat in sight. Her heartbeat began to slow. Maybe she had imagined it all. She had just turned back to the desk, hand reaching for the phone when the final SUV door opened. And he stepped out, the cowboy hat, the scuffed boots, the grey wool coat, but today he stood taller, his gaze sharper, and every step carried unmistakable authority. Megan froze. Her fingers clutched the edge of the counter, her legs felt nailed to the floor. The entire lobby fell silent. Lisa stood beside her, whispering in a breathless voice, "It's him! It's really him!" From across the room, Jake murmured, "Oh my God!" You yelled at the hotel owner, and right then, Mr. Thompson came hurrying out. He didn't move like he usually did during internal inspections. This time, he walked briskly, only to slow down as he approached. He straightened his tie, then extended his hand with a rare show of deep respect. "Welcome back, Mr. Eastwood. It's truly an honor to have you here, Mr. Eastwood." The world collapsed around Megan. Clint simply offered a soft smile, shook Thompson's hand, then slowly turned his eyes to survey the lobby. He said nothing, just observed, as if he were checking the air, the rhythm of the place, and even the eyes trying to hide their unease. And then he looked directly at Megan, just for a few seconds. But it was enough to make her feel exposed, as if he could see all the things she herself had been avoiding. There was no anger, no scolding, just the look of a man who understood and was waiting to see what you'd do once you understood. Megan felt her cheeks burn. She tried to force a smile, but failed. Jake stepped up beside her and whispered with a smirk, "You just kicked the owner out of his own suite. Legendary." Megan didn't respond. She simply watched in silence as Clint and the board stepped into the meeting room. One question kept replaying in her mind. Do I still have a chance to make this right? The silence that followed Clint's entry into the conference room wasn't like anything Megan had experienced before. It wasn't the quiet of anticipation. It was the quiet of averted glances, unspoken questions, and a nameless shame crawling beneath the skin. Megan stood behind the counter, eyes locked on the computer screen. But she couldn't read a single word. The words she had said the day before were looping in her head like a broken tape recorder. "Are you sure you don't want to check the price again? Could save you. A cow. Now." Every word felt like a blade. And the man she'd said them to wasn't just an important guest. He was the founder and owner of Lone Pine Lodge. A man she should have greeted with respect. And instead, she had shown him the door with contempt. That entire morning, Megan could barely breathe. Guests came and went. Lisa tried to keep the atmosphere light. Jake occasionally let out a whistle laced with meaning. But to Megan, it all sounded like distant noise behind a taut pane of glass inside her mind. Around midday, the sound of leather shoes echoed slowly down the hallway. Clint and the board emerged from the meeting room, walking through the lobby. No one said a word. Clint paused at the front desk for just a moment. His eyes met Megan's, and this time, he gave a small nod, just a nod. No scolding, no anger, not a single word about what had happened. And somehow, that made it harder to breathe than any reprimand ever could. She wished he would have gotten mad, wished he had pointed at her and said, "You were rude," because at least then, she'd know how to respond. But Clint had chosen silence. A silence that felt like standing in front of a mirror and being forced to face the darkest corners of yourself. As the afternoon wore on, The mood in the hotel gradually settled. Lisa came over and gently pushed a glass of water toward Megan. "I don't think he's angry," Lisa whispered so quietly only the two of them could hear. "I'm not afraid he's angry," Megan replied, eyes still fixed on the counter. "I'm afraid he's right about me." Lisa said nothing more. She simply placed a hand on Megan's shoulder, a quiet, steady squeeze. For the first time since starting the job, Megan didn't know what to do next. She, who always had the answer, who always kept control, now found herself drained by the sheer weight of kindness from the very man she had misjudged. That night, before leaving the desk, Megan opened the staff notebook where she often jotted down guest comments. She flipped back to an older page, one from a few weeks ago, where an elderly guest had once written, "Thank you for not asking what I drove or where I came from. You were the first person to greet me with your eyes, not just a glance." Megan had once thought that was nothing special. Today, she finally understood how much difference there was between looking at someone and seeing them. The next afternoon, the hotel operated as usual. But for Megan, nothing felt usual anymore. She tried to complete every task faster, more accurately, with fewer snide remarks. She avoided people's eyes, tried to forget the look Clint had given her the day before. But the harder you try to outrun fate, the faster it catches up to you. At exactly 4:12 p.m., a voice rose from behind the front desk, deep and steady, like pebbles dropping into a quiet stream. "Miss Delaney." Megan froze. She turned around so slowly. It felt as if she feared time might move too fast. Clint was standing there, same old coat, same cowboy hat in hand. But his eyes today were not quiet. They were clear, steady, and direct. "Do you have a moment?" "Yes, of course. Mr. Eastwood," Megan replied, her throat dry as paper. He said nothing more, just motioned gently toward the corner of the lobby where two armchairs sat near the fireplace. Megan followed, her footsteps light, as though the floor might collapse beneath her at any second. They both sat down, a short silence. Clint looked into the flickering fire, then turned to her, his voice calm and direct. "I'd like to talk about the first day we met." Megan clenched her hands in her lap, eyes cast down. "I'm truly sorry, sir. I didn't know who you were." "If I had known," Clint raised a hand to interrupt, not harshly, but firmly. "It's not about you not knowing who I was. It's about you thinking you already knew enough, that you didn't need to listen." His words weren't loud, they weren't cruel, but they struck exactly where no one had ever dared to touch her pride, built on assumptions she thought were instinct. "I'm used to being judged," Clint continued. "People see a cowboy hat and assume I'm outdated, see worn-out boots and think I'm broke. But that's not what disappoints me. What hurts most is when people in the business of hospitality forget that kindness doesn't require categories, it only requires humanity." Megan looked up, her eyes red and wet. "I was wrong. I truly am sorry. Not because you own this hotel, but because you were the only person that day who didn't react to my disrespect. Clint studied her for a few more seconds, then gently said, "You're not a bad person, but you forgot why you started this job. You came here to organize, to manage, but also to welcome, to uplift. And no one, I emphasize, no one should be denied kindness just because they don't look the part." Megan nodded, tears falling silently. "I understand now, and I want to start over, not to keep my job, but because I know I can be better. I won't let that mistake define me." Clint offered a slight smile. "I believe in second chances, not because people deserve forgiveness, but because they deserve the chance to choose again how they want to live." He stood up and placed his hat back on his head before walking away. He paused and looked directly at her. "Don't disappoint me again, Miss Delaney. And more importantly, don't disappoint yourself." Then he walked away, leaving Megan by the fireplace, a storm of emotions swelling in her chest. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was a quiet promise, one she made to herself, that she would change. Not for Clint, not for the hotel, but for the woman she wanted to become. The next morning, when the clock struck 6:45, Megan was already at the hotel. She didn't wear the tight white button-down like she always did, but instead chose a soft cream blouse, neat but gentler. Her hair was still tied back, but not too tight. And most importantly, her gaze no longer scanned guests like resumes. It paused, softened, and truly saw them. Lisa walked in and blinked in surprise. "You're here early. There's no inspection today." "It's not for the inspection," Megan replied, offering a rare smile, gentle, not sharp. "I just wanted to start differently." She began with the smallest things, when an elderly couple approached the desk, looking tired. Megan didn't just ask. "Name on the reservation," she smiled and said, "Long drive." "Huh. Let me get you some hot tea while your husband fills out the check-in form." She personally escorted the elderly couple to the elevator, carefully explaining where the restaurant was and how to arrange for a car in the evening. No one had asked her to do that. But for the first time, Megan felt it was simply the right thing to do. During her shift, Jake joked half seriously, "New script today. No snarky lines for the guys who forgot to shave." Megan smiled. "I guess some things just aren't worth saying, or at least they're not funny anymore." Even Mr. Thompson noticed. He stood at a distance, arms crossed, watching her interact with guests without saying a word, but nodding slightly with approval. Later that afternoon, when a family with 2 crying kids entered the lobby, most staff instinctively stepped aside. But Megan walked up, knelt down to eye level with the little girl who was sobbing, and gently held out a colored pencil. "Do you like drawing? I've got paper and crayons in the meeting room. Want to come draw with me?" The little girl stopped crying instantly. The mother looked at Megan as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. An hour later, that same family left a handwritten note on the front desk. "Thank you to the front desk lady. You didn't just give us a room, you made us feel welcome." When Lisa read the note out loud, Megan stayed quiet. But inside, something cracked open, something light, something clear. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the need to prove herself by being sharp. She just needed to be real and to be kind. That evening, before leaving the desk, she pulled out the old notebook from her drawer, the one she used to jot down employee mistakes. But this time, she opened a new page and wrote Day 1, relearning how to greet people with trust, not judgment. Then she closed the notebook, not locked, not hidden, like a quiet reminder to herself. True change begins when you stop hiding the outdated parts of who you are. The news that Clint Eastwood was the owner of Lone Pine Lodge spread like wildfire across the dry hills of Wyoming. Within days, the entire town of Jackson Ridge was buzzing. From the corner bakery to the tiny cafe near the ski lot, everyone had their own version of the story. The receptionist who insulted the owner without knowing it. Some said Megan had kicked him out of the lobby. Others embellished that Mr. Eastwood had planned to sell the hotel out of offense, but changed his mind after seeing a single glance of remorse. A few even swore that Clint had personally updated Megan's file in the internal system, marking her as leadership potential. Of course, the truth wasn't that dramatic. Clint never said a word, and Megan simply kept working, neither denying nor defending anything. But she could feel it. Every guest who entered the lobby now looked at her differently, no longer as the sharp-tongued receptionist, but as the girl who learned the biggest lesson in hospitality, the hardest way possible. One day, while checking the reservation list, Megan heard a child's giggle behind her. She turned around to see a little boy hiding behind the tall curtain. His mother, a young woman, hurried over, apologizing for his playful mischief. Megan just smiled. It's okay. He's the first special guest who ever gave that curtain a real reason to be there. The mother looked surprised, then burst into laughter too. She pulled out her phone and snapped a candid photo of her son and Megan pretending to sword fight with a plastic pen. That photo, just a few days later, was posted on Facebook with the caption, "We came just to rest, but we left feeling at home. Thank you to the front desk girl who taught my son that grown-ups can play too." Small things like that began weaving a new reputation for Lone Pine Lodge. A reputation not built on stars but on heart. The staff quietly started to change too. Jake the bellhop, known for cracking jokes, was now seen bringing hot water to an elderly lady with joint pain. Lisa, Megan's closest friend, proposed setting up a free reading corner for young guests. And though no one said it out loud, everyone knew it was Megan who sparked the shift. One evening, when the hotel was quiet and the lobby bathed in soft yellow light, Mr. Thompson stepped out of his office. He paused at the front desk and gently tapped on the counter. "I heard a guest came by recently and got turned away for not being impressive enough." Megan looked up. "I remember. Well, he just booked the entire hotel for his company's year-end retreat." Mr. Thompson said. He nodded, then leaned in slightly. "And you know what? In the notes section of the reservation, he wrote, 'Because someone at the front desk learned to see with her heart, not just her eyes.'" Megan said nothing, not because she didn't know what to say, but because it was enough. She didn't need praise. She didn't need her mistake erased. She didn't need a new title. She just needed to know that she had truly changed, and that people saw it. As for the whispers, she still heard them. People still secretly snapped photos, still leaned in to whisper, "There she is." That's the girl who handled Clint Eastwood back then. Megan simply smiled, because now she was no longer the receptionist who insulted the owner. She was living proof of what Clint once said. No one grows without messing up. What matters is how you choose to rise after the fall. That October, Jackson Ridge stepped into autumn with golden leaves thick along the trail leading up the hill. Lone Pine Lodge glowed like a lantern in the forest, not because of fancy decorations, but because something special was happening that night. The evening of gratitude and renewal, an event proposed and personally designed by Clint Eastwood himself. It wasn't a Hollywood gala, no ball gowns, no LED stages, just warm amber lighting, soft acoustic music, the scent of baked apple pie in the air, and people who had all lived through a season of unforgettable change. Megan stood behind the front desk, a deep midnight blue silk scarf tied softly at her collar, the new symbol for hotel staff. Her heart beat a little faster than usual, not from nerves, but from gratitude for still being here. Not as the girl who messed up, but as the one who rose from it stronger. Lisa passed by and handed her a glass of orange juice. "You good? I'm good. I just never imagined I'd be at an event where the owner is Clint Eastwood, and you're not crying from laughing at me." Lisa laughed. "I never imagined you'd become the role model for all new hires. It's disgusting, really." They both laughed, then fell into a quiet gaze, looking out at the main lobby together. The guests had nearly all arrived. Locals, returning tourists. No one had come because of reputation. They came to witness something real, a journey of growth, an evening about people, not accomplishments. And then Mr. Thompson stepped up to the small stage. "We're not here tonight just to celebrate a year of successful operation," he began, his voice deep and clear, "but to recognize the people who have made Lone Pine Lodge a place not just for resting, but for rediscovering who we are." He paused for a few seconds, then continued, "I'd like to invite to the stage a man who chose not to judge us by numbers, but by how we treat one another, Mr. Clint Eastwood." Applause rose gentle but full of respect. Clint stepped forward, dark blue shirt, brown jacket, the same cowboy hat. He held no notes, looked at no screen. He simply looked out across the crowd and spoke. "I didn't build this hotel to generate profit. I built it because I used to be a traveler passing through cold towns, where people looked at me like I didn't belong. I wanted a place where anyone from the owner to the bellhop would be welcomed with a warm gaze." He paused. His eyes scanned the room. "Tonight, I want to honor someone not because she's perfect, but because she had the courage to admit she wasn't, and more importantly, because she chose to change. Megan Delaney, please join me up here." The room froze for the beat of a heart, then erupted in applause. Megan rose, her face flushed. She walked slowly toward the stage, feeling like every memory, every mistake, every lesson learned was walking there beside her. Clint smiled and handed her the microphone. She took a deep breath, then spoke. Her voice shaky but clear. "I used to think I was good at my job because I was fast, sharp, and could sort people in an instant. But one day, I met someone who didn't fit any category, and I handled him with prejudice. Turns out, he was the person who gave me the chance to begin again. Not with threats, but with a silence full of grace." She looked straight at Clint. "I know I was wrong, but I also know these mistakes don't define who we are. It's how we make them right that shows who we truly are." Applause filled the room again this time, heartfelt, not for prestige, not for a script, but for truth. Clint placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've walked a path not everyone dares to take, and I believe you're going to go much farther." Megan stepped down to continued applause. Lisa hugged her tight. Jake leaned in and whispered, "I'm telling this story to my grandkids one day about the girl who yelled at her boss and still became the manager." Megan laughed. She knew tonight wasn't the end of her story. It was only the first page of a life lived by what Clint had once planted in her. A place that wasn't just a hotel, but a home. And a person who wasn't just an employee, but a symbol of true growth. Months passed after that night of recognition. Winter came and went, snow blanketing the winding road to Lone Pine Lodge. But inside the hotel, the fire from the hearth and from human hearts never faded. Megan Delaney was no longer the prim and sharp receptionist she had once been. She was now the head of guest services, the woman behind the quiet but powerful changes shaping the very soul of the lodge. She launched a mentorship program training new staff, not just in technical skills, but in how to see people with trust. She personally wrote a guidebook titled "Listen to Guests as if they were loved ones coming home," now being piloted across the entire Blue Mesa group. She was the first to stand up in conflict, the first to bend down when someone stumbled, the first to raise her hand in apology instead of defense. And above all, she was the first to admit, "I once got it wrong." And I'm grateful for that, because without it, I would never have learned how to get it right. Clint still visited the hotel from time to time, never announced, never asked for attention. He would simply stand at a distance watching how the staff greeted each guest with quiet, authentic warmth. One afternoon, as Clint was about to leave after a short visit, Megan stepped outside to see him off. "You planning on selling this place?" she asked, half joking, half curious. Clint tilted his head, smiled faintly. "You think I built all this just to turn a profit?" Clint asked. "No," Megan shook her head. "I think you built it so people could find a place to touch the good in themselves." Clint gave a slight nod. "And you're living proof of that." She watched him walk away, his steps steady, unhurried, as if carrying the very history of this land on his shoulders. And she understood Clint didn't need to say anything more. He had already left behind his greatest legacy, not in wood-paneled walls, not in linens or revenue, but in the people who changed the moment they walked through these doors. That night, Megan added another line to her notebook. "Sometimes The person who makes us feel the most ashamed is also the one who helps us grow the most. And the true gift isn't forgiveness. It's when someone believes you're still worth starting over. Lone Pine Lodge kept running, welcoming guests like they were pieces of the world returning home. And Megan, once someone who judged others by the shoes they wore, now she was the first to open the door and say, "Welcome, whoever you are, wherever you've come from. We're truly glad you're here." If you've ever misjudged someone, remember your mistake doesn't make you a bad person, but refusing to change just might. And if one day you meet someone who makes you ashamed of how you treated them, be grateful, because sometimes people don't come into your life to judge you. They come to remind you of the best version of yourself, the one you may have forgotten. Para.